Hi, I'm William Spaniel. Let's learn about international relations. Today's topic is the rally round the flag effect. And the big question we're interested in addressing here is, how does the Security Council act as oversight? And we're going to be tackling this in a bit of a roundabout way because we first have to introduce the concept of the rally round the flag effect. And this is fairly straightforward. It is the tendency for leaders' approval ratings to shoot up during a time of international crisis. And so to give us a common footing here, I want to look back to the George W. Bush administration. So we see 8 years that Bush was in office. This is a graph of the approval ratings over that time. Green is approval, red is disapproval, yellow is indifference. You can see two big jumps in President Bush's approval ratings. The first is the biggest by far. This is the September 11th attacks. So there's an international crisis, the 9/11 attacks, Bush's approval ratings soar there. And then there's a second one, which isn't as big, but still pretty big, which is the start of the Iraq War. So you see two different international crises here and two different jumps in Bush's approval ratings. This type of thing is common for this sort of situation when the United States is in an international crisis. But at the same time, there's a bit of a dilemma here if you're a citizen. So citizens only want to support their leaders in a crisis when that crisis is actually in the national interest, right? If we are actually in a legitimate crisis, say September 11th, then I want to say, yes, I support the president. Yes, I support the United States. We're in the right here. We want to show the other side that we're not going to bend or break very easily. But on the other hand, this is prone to abuse because of principal agent problems, getting back to what we talked about in the previous unit. So if the president is always going to experience a huge bounce in his approval ratings, then as a president, you would have incentive to create or instigate a fake crisis that's not in the national interest just to get that effect, especially if you're worried about not getting reelected. And likewise, if you're a dictator or something like that and you're worried about a coup, you have incentive to instigate a fake crisis, again, in hopes of making sure that coup doesn't happen. And so this is a classic principal agent problem, and it really preys on the information asymmetry, which we've, again, seen before in principal agent problems, where national leaders know whether a crisis is legitimate or whether they've just instigated it for false pretense, and citizens do not. National leaders have the intelligence in front of them. It's their job to understand the intelligence. That's what they're trained to do. You as a citizen, you have a normal job. You are not a trained intelligence analyst, and you don't even have access to most of that intelligence. And so you're really in the dark about what's going on. National leaders have a great idea about whether a crisis is legitimate or not. Citizens do not. And so a devious leader can prey upon this fact, create a false crisis, and benefit from that. So how does this play into the Security Council, right? This is the unit on the Security Council. So what is the Security Council doing here to mitigate this problem? Well, the Security Council is a bunch of states, right? And some of these are the really big states, like the permanent members, the United Kingdom, France, China, Russia. They all have huge security agencies. Unlike an individual citizen in the United States, these guys don't really suffer from the information asymmetry nearly as bad as a person does. And so what these countries can do is provide third-party verification on the authenticity of a crisis. So there's a crisis, the president sends a resolution to the Security Council, the president of the United States sends that resolution to the Security Council votes on it, and this vote can communicate information to the individuals within the United States here. Why is that? Well, imagine that the president's resolution actually gets a yes vote. So everyone on the Security Council supports it. That's giving you, as a citizen in the United States, a really good indicator that the crisis is real. Everyone on the Security Council agrees that this crisis is actually relevant and that you are in the right. So this is a good indicator to you as a citizen in the United States that this crisis is real, and so you should be supporting the president. It's not something made up so the president can get reelected. On the other hand, a no vote, what does that tell you? Well, it could tell you one of two things. It could tell you that you're getting a no vote because the crisis is a sham. It's not actually a smart move. It's going to be unnecessarily costly, and you as a citizen in the United States should not be wanting this because this is just going to be bad for the world. It could also be telling you, though, that the other countries are biased. So, for example, when the Iraq War was going on or going through the United Nations for support on the Iraq War, it ended up not actually getting a vote because the United States knew that it wasn't going to pass. But one of the reasons why it wasn't going to pass is because of France. France was going to vote no on any resolution. And there's this issue of bias here because France was actually helping Iraq develop nuclear technology in the 70s and the 80s. And so having that France vote doesn't really tell you much of anything because it may be biased against the Iraq War in general. But nevertheless, this no indicator, the no vote is an indicator of something going on. And so that's going to make you double check, rethink about your support, and perhaps not support it, versus a yes vote, which is a clear indicator that, hey, this is actually a good thing and you should be supporting it. And so what we actually see in practice is this holding. So controlling for other factors, presidents under a crisis and with United Nations Security Council approval get a 9% bonus to their approval ratings. So if my approval rating was at 45%, I'm in a crisis, and I have my rally around the flag effect, let's say it'd be 10%, then I jump up to 55% without Security Council support. But with Security Council support, I'd be jumping up to 64%. So what we see here is something to this effect here, where the Security Council is providing information and citizens are responding to this with extra approval for the particular crisis and approval for their leaders. So that is the rally around the flag effect and how the Security Council can actually provide information to individuals. And that also wraps up our unit on the Security Council. And starting in the next unit, we'll continue our focus on international institutions when we start our discussion on public goods. Hope you enjoyed this, and I'll see you next time. Take care.